We need Greenland for national security. One way or the other, we're going to get it. Greenland have been part of the Danish kingdom for 800 years. It's an integrated part of our country. Trump renews threat of military force to annex Greenland. Trump places Greenland under US Northern Command. $3 billion. That's the deal Greenland just struck with Canada and the European Union, completely sidelining the United States. What was once brushed off as an island you could buy is now ground zero for a geopolitical earthquake. Just weeks after President Trump stood before Congress and declared, "We will annex Greenland one way or another," everything changed. Backed by Ottawa and Brussels, Greenland flipped the script, locking in a historic mining deal for rare earths and gold, and leaving Washington out in the cold. The result, America's defense supply chain is in chaos. Key missile programs are on hold, and Trump is scrambling to regain control over what he once called the key to the Arctic. This isn't just about land. It's about who controls tomorrow's energy, technology, and global influence. So how did the US get blindsided on a battlefield made of rocks, ice, and ambition? And can Washington claw its way back? Or has a neutral power like Canada just outplayed the world's biggest superpower? Let's break it down. Just after Trump declared Greenland, one way or another, would be US soil, the narrative flipped dramatically in March 2025. On March the 28th, Greenland's new coalition government, formed explicitly to resist annexation pressures, rejected US overtures and instead aligned with major global players. That same month, Ottawa and Brussels signaled a strategic shift by deepening joint initiatives focused on Greenland's energy transition. This not only sidelined Washington, but cemented Canada-EU access to strategic resources. Greenland's pivot sent immediate shockwaves through Washington. Defense analysts highlighted that the island sits at top one of the world's richest deposits of rare earths and molybdenum, minerals essential for hypersonic missiles and advanced radar systems. Lockheed Martin even warned supply chain delays could disrupt missile test schedules, a claim backed by internal Pentagon memos leaked to Reuters. Then came the trade weapon. In response, Trump slapped 25% tariffs on Canadian and EU steel and rare earth imports as part of a broader crackdown on export bans and trade leverage. Rushing to retaliate, the EU threatened countermeasures. Deepening the trade war and geopolitical shock felt across global market sectors. By June 2025, Canada-backed mining and LNG export projects worth billions quietly shifted Arctic influence away from the US. Within weeks, Germany began sourcing alternative LNG lanes, while citing a move to reduce dependency on both Russian gas and US supply dominance. Berlin officials told Bloomberg it was part of a broader strategy marked by monetary tightening and supply chain diversification. This becomes more than a political spat. Greenland's shift means the US lost control over key parts of its Arctic supply chain. Meanwhile, Canada and the EU have constructed a legal and economic alliance grounded in clean energy and resource sovereignty. And Trump faced with back-to-back blows, diplomatic sideline, tariff backlash, and drained alliances. He's left without a strategic option in the Arctic. This is not a failed acquisition, it's a seismic rearrangement of global power. Trump came in loud, and he's being shut down just as forcefully. On April the 27th, 2025, Greenland and Denmark issued a joint statement that reads like a political mic drop. Any foreign coercion undermines NATO alliance principles and Arctic stability. This isn't diplomatic puffery, it's a warning shot. Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen leveled the hammer. We don't bend. Only Greenlanders can decide, she said plainly. That's not ice-cold rhetoric. It's a full-scale diplomatic lockdown. The stakes go beyond pride. Denmark and Greenland share control and defense. Denmark is actively ratifying a 2023 US-Denmark Defense Pact, even amid the Greenland crisis. That deal expands US military privileges in Danish territory, but Greenland remains completely off-limits. It's a geopolitical Rubicon. Denmark will let NATO in, but Greenland belongs solely to its people. Nielsen, Greenland's newly elected Prime Minister, has also rebuffed White House overtures, saying, "We do not belong to others." Just 6% of the island's residents aspire to join the US, according to a January poll. Let's talk economics and security. Greenland's landmass covers 2.1 million square km, yet its population is just approximately 57,000. Tiny but critical terrain. Beneath its ice are uranium, rare earths, offshore oil, and gas. $50 billion worth in one estimate. Control here means control of Arctic resources and military choke points. So Washington's interest isn't nostalgia, it's strategic leverage, missile early warning, Duke Gap access, northern polar routes. That explains Trump's March 13th remark to NATO's Jens Stoltenberg, affirming US control is needed for international security. But when he refused to rule out force, Denmark called it unacceptable. That red line echoed across Europe. In short, Trump tried to strong-arm Greenland into a US sphere. Denmark and Greenland responded with unity and data, real polling, real defense agreements. This isn't a political squabble. It's a geopolitical showdown with real numbers proving it. Just when Trump thought he had Greenland in his pocket, Canada and the EU swooped in and dropped a $3 billion bomb. On June 19, 2025, Greenland Resources, a Canadian firm backed by the European Raw Materials Alliance and the European Investment Bank, clinched a 30-year permit to mine molybdenum at the Malberg site in East Greenland. That open-pit mine is set to produce £32.8 million per year, enough to cover 25% of Europe's molybdenum needs. But molybdenum is just the start. Greenland has also signed a major deal with Amaroq or Amaroq Minerals, another Canadian-controlled venture. That project focused on land-based rare earths and gold, pulled in roughly £45 million from Denmark's EPO fund. Altogether, capital from Canada, the EU, Denmark, Norway, the UK, and even some private US investors have formed what's become a robust Arctic mining alliance without a single dime of official US government money. European strategy here is comprehensive. The EU is backing 13 new critical material projects globally, including Madagascar, South Africa, Canada, Britain, and Greenland, under its €5.5 billion Critical Raw Materials Act. That EU-Canada-Greenland trio is now spawning a resource pipeline locked tight against US control. Washington simply isn't in it. This isn't academic. Greenland's deposits include not just molybdenum and gold, but also rare earths, copper, nickel, and even a northosite valued for eco-friendly aluminum production. Together, they mark a strategic Arctic bloc. Greenland adds leverage. Canada brings expertise and investment muscle. The EU delivers policy support and buyer access. The result? A comprehensive supply chain fortress at the top of the world. For Trump, this is a geopolitical gut punch. His efforts to buy Greenland, threaten force, and assert US strategic rights just fizzled. The real story isn't about acquisition, it's about who shapes the future of Arctic resources. With this new alliance, Greenland has opted for diversified sovereignty, not US dominance, and the ripples could reshape global mineral geopolitics. Music. Now NATO's unity is hitting the iceberg. In a bold geopolitical move, France deployed its nuclear-capable Suffren-class submarine into Baffin Bay, near Greenland, in early June 2025 as part of the Zen Dark 2025 mission. Though officially tagged as observation, military analysts see this as a direct check on recent unilateral US Arctic moves. That underwater drama signals more than a training run. France's Mistral amphibious carrier and Surcouf frigate also sailed through the icy waters off Greenland in June 2025, reinforcing Paris's intent to stake a clear presence in the region. Meanwhile, Poland and several Eastern European NATO members are holding their tongues. Despite heavy reliance on American defense ties, Warsaw has refrained from endorsing Washington's Greenland strategy. Analysts note this silence as a sign of worry among allies over the growing rift. The Guardian recently flagged this moment as rare NATO division over Arctic control. EU members like France are favouring a multilateral approach. While the US is charging ahead with independent military assertiveness, the implications are serious. NATO was founded on shared defence. Now its Arctic strategy is splintering. One side leans toward collective control. The other wants unilateral dominance that undermines alliance cohesion and raises uncertainty over Arctic security. This showdown comes as climate change melts ice and opens new polar routes around Greenland. Strategic choke points like the GUK Gap and natural resource zones are heating up. Jens Stoltenberg and EU leaders warned that if NATO fractures here, it could ripple through Northern Europe, weakening deterrence from Scandinavia to the Baltic. So far, France has led the charge with visible naval strength. Others remain cautious. Washington's push for unilateral muscle in Greenland is provoking allies, while Paris signals, "We're watching." NATO's Arctic challenge isn't just about submarines, it's about trust and strategy. If allies can't agree on basic principles in the high north, what does that say about collective defence down south? And if the US continues alone, it risks isolating itself and reshaping Arctic security on its own terms. This shift isn't just about rocks, it's rattling America's defence backbone. In early June 2025, Greenland's Malberg Malibdinum project secured a 10-year offtake agreement without a kumpu. It ensures £8 million of molybdenum per year, covering roughly 25% of Europe's demand. The deal is worth about $160 million annually. This isn't niche mining. It's critical to missile and hypersonic tech, where molybdenum alloys protect warheads from extreme heat. Washington's defense giants are already panicking. Lockheed Martin's ambitious hypersonic missile program hinges on reliable supplies of heat-resistant alloys, cobalt, nickel, molybdenum. But experts warn the US supply chain is incapable of supporting deployment of hypersonic weapons at scale. That jelly roll defense alignment is cracking, and Greenland's pivot cuts a crucial artery. Raytheon is also scrambling. The company is reportedly turning to Chile and Australia to source molybdenum, but logistics costs there are significantly higher than from Greenland. That gap drives up expenses across the supply chain from the mine to missile assemblies, undermining US defense economics. On top of that, the IRA, Inflation Reduction Act, rounds out the pressure. It mandates that critical defense materials must originate in North America or strategic partner countries. Greenland's shift toward Canada and Europe now puts US OEMs in a bind. Trump's allies in industry can't claim compliance without sourcing from trusted suppliers, meaning Greenland minerals are off the table. The result? Costly supply redesigns, delayed timelines, and strained compliance hoops. Without Greenland molybdenum, hypersonic warhead coatings designed to resist millisecond temps above 2,000 degrees Celsius lose their reliability buffer. That delays Lockheed's next GRAC, and it weakens US deterrence in the Arctic and beyond. In short, Greenland's deal isn't a mining headline, it's a strategic coup. By redirecting critical metals outside US reach, Canada and the EU have effectively hit America's defense industries where it hurts. Trump's grand Greenland play has backfired, dangling more losses than gains. The shift on June 13, 2023, when Greenland's parliament passed a new mining act, marked a turning point. Canada didn't hesitate. Firms like Canada-based Greenland Resources and Amarok Minerals quickly embraced these terms, inking a $3 billion deal for rare earth and gold mining, sealing Canada's military in as the partner of choice. Meanwhile, major American players, Freeport among them, pulled back. They balked at the profit-sharing rules. That retreat made room for Canada and the European Union. Negotiations for Greenland's next strategic resource rounds are already underway, but conspicuously without US attendance. Instead, Canadian and EU reps hold a stronger seat at the table. In effect, Greenland's message is clear. We welcome responsible partners, not profiteers. Why it matters. Greenland sits atop vast critical minerals, estimated to contain 43 of the 50 minerals the US flags as vital for national security. Those resources power everything from electric vehicles to advanced weaponry. Losing US influence here isn't just a diplomatic setback, it chips away at America's supply chain resilience. This outcome has immediate economic and geopolitical impact. Canada secures a multi-billion-dollar extraction pipeline, boosting its strategic leverage in the Arctic and chip in on NATO-aligned partnerships. Greenland, meanwhile, keeps more wealth home and sharpens its independence ambitions. Storytelling lens. Washington's absence isn't accidental, it's self-inflicted. After pushing hard for purchase or annexation in 2019 to 2025, the US under Trump stumbled in follow-through. Greenland reasserting sovereignty laid down the new rules in mid-2023 and then looked elsewhere. Canada jumped, the US lost. In short, Greenland's law flipped the script. Canada isn't just keeping up for the first time in modern memory, it's starting to pull ahead quietly, taking control of the supply chains that power the future. So here's the big question. What's behind Canada's sudden rise to the top of the global trade game, and how will Donald Trump and the US fight back before it's too late? Stay with us as we break down the biggest trade story of the year, because what happens next could shake the entire world economy in 2025. While headlines screamed about tariffs and tech wars, Canada made a quieter move, one that could reshape the global trade game beneath the snowy ridges of Yukon and the industrial belts of Ontario and Quebec. A strategic bet was already paying off. Canada wasn't just digging minerals out of the ground, it was building power. Lithium, cobalt, nickel, and rare earths, these aren't just buzzwords. They are the lifeblood of electric vehicles, smartphones, and next-G military systems, and Canada. It's sitting on a gold mine. Canada still ranks among the top nickel producers with over 132,000 metric tons. In 2023, output dipped a bit last year due to cutbacks at Glenna's Raglan and Sudbury mines, but Canada's role in the global battery supply chain remains critical. Ontario led the country in nickel production in late 2024. The Canadian government took a key step by pledging $1 for rare earth development in northern Quebec and Labrador. The funding supports new roads and port facilities early, but essential groundwork for Canada's push into global mineral supply chains. These aren't just mines, they're full-spectrum facilities designed to extract, refine, and ship high-grade materials directly to global markets. And here's the kicker. The US battery industry can't go it alone under the Inflation Reduction Act. EV makers must source critical minerals from free trade partners like Canada to qualify for federal tax credits that's made Canadian suppliers essential to keeping the US battery boom alive, that gives Ottawa not just leverage but veto power over critical supply chains that Washington once assumed it controlled, while courting Canada as a stable alternative. Drawn by new trade deals and a more predictable policy climate, this documentary looks at why companies from autos to tech are redirecting investment northward, citing real examples, data, and the voices of decision-makers on both sides of the border. When Trump took office, he promised to shake up trade. He quickly slapped 25% duties on Canadian steel and aluminium in March 2025 and threatened 25% tariffs on cars and parts. His aides even floated a 10% levy on all Canadian energy exports. The result was economic shock. The old relationship with the United States is over, declared Canada's new Prime Minister Mark Carney during his 2025 visit to Washington. Canadian firms braced for impact. As Reuters reported, a British Columbia capsule maker began scouting Asian partners, and even a costume manufacturer slashed US prices. If you are a smart, savvy business person, you are not going to jump right back into another arrangement where you are totally reliant on a US partner, warned trade consultant Mike Chisholm. He notes that owners, banks, and investors all crave stability, and they're now eyeing other markets. PNP Pharmaceuticals in British Columbia, for example, is venturing into other markets like Asia to hedge against America's volatility. Label pack printing is even focusing only on Canada and shrinking its US sales, afraid that if Trump gets mad and throws a 50% tariff on Canadian goods, it's going to really put us out of the market. These anecdotes reflect a broader trend. Canada's businesses are retrenching at home and overseas, while the US trade scene swings unpredictably. In March 2025, Trump imposed 25% tariffs on all steel and aluminum and announced 25% on non-NAFTA compliant cars and parts. Canada answered in kind with 25% duties on $155 billion of US goods, including iconic items like bourbon, wine, and even Florida orange juice. Prime Minister Trudeau warned Americans directly that tariffs against Canada will put your jobs at risk, potentially shutting down American auto assembly plants and other manufacturing facilities, and would raise costs for you, including food at the grocery store and gas at the pump. In the US, auto executives and economists warned that 25% auto tariffs would sharply raise